Combining strength and mobility is a beautiful thing to me. It is simply beautiful to see somebody display strength, great strength, through a long range of motion. Seeing Klokov do a front squat with 250 kilos all the way down. I'm talking his glutes are almost touching the floor. Pause, right? So no bounce, and explode out of that position all the way to the top and then drop the bar. I remember that footage. To this day, I think about that. I reckon I've seen that video probably 100 times, probably more over the years. It's just a beautiful thing. Or seeing Clarence Kennedy do a pause, right? A pause, 300 kilos squat, back squat. You know, there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys out there that can do 300 kilos, low bar, 2 parallel, and go back up. And it's kind of like not that impressive to see it nowadays, especially in the powerlifting and how the sport is evolving. But to see these two extremes, usually you would see people on one end of the spectrum, but usually you don't see a combination of those two attributes, strength and mobility. It's a fascinating thing. I remember when I first saw, was it Ronnie Coleman and then there was a few other guys, bodybuilders, IFBB bodybuilders, Mr. Olympias, who had great flexibility, Kai Green, who could do set of splits. They could do splits. Such muscular, huge men with flexibility. I remember Rich Piana. I don't know if you guys remember Rich Piana, how flexible he was. Extremely flexible, man. Extremely flexible. So coming from a basketball world with performance in my mind, shooting, dunking, like seeing Allen Iverson cross Jordan up at the top of the key and shoot. The reason why I kind of loved Allen Iverson when I was growing up, he was my favorite player, the first kind of player that I really kind of caught my eye, was the fact that the reason was because he was such a small guy, winning an MVP, taking his team all the way to the NBA Finals against the Lakers, taking a game off them, doing all of these things, and he's a little guy. He shouldn't have the right to be able to do that. That's a beautiful thing. Like, he's excelling at something he shouldn't be excelling. Kind of like a really, really, really strong guy being really flexible and mobile, or a really, really mobile guy being really, really strong. Like those two things, like you see yoga people, right? You see yoga guys who are like extremely freaking contortionists almost, like, they can do everything, but they're weak. They can't squat 3 times their own damn body weight. You don't see that blend. So when you eventually find somebody to display that, it catches your eye. That's kind of what I like and what I envision. On top of all of that, I also like the idea of raw, not having a belt. To me, it's just, I know having a belt, a lot of people regard that as raw, but to me, it's like, let's look at it from a layman's point of view. It's not raw, man. Like, you're using assistance. You're using something that is a critical part of the whole thing. You're using an aid. But anyway, that's besides the point, besides everything. Like, to me, the mobility and the strength is what kind of catches my eye the most. Today, I felt not too bad. I thought I was going to have a right session today. I kind of walked in, did my warm-up with Hindu squats, kind of bodyweight squats, whatever you want to call them. Warmed up a little bit. I only did 3 sets of 30. That's kind of like less than usual. Usually I do 5, sometimes even freaking 10 before I get into it. But today I only did 3, just get the blood rolling around, and I thought I was going to have a good session, but my hips were not having it. My hips were tight. My legs felt really tight. I mean, yesterday I did 2 sessions really of, ham curls, whatever. Yesterday was also a kind of slowish day. I wasn't feeling it. Today I kind of felt strong, right? I had a lighter day yesterday. I was expected to hit some really nice weights, but I just could not have the mobility. I couldn't display the mobility. I felt like I had the strength. I just didn't have the mobility. So in that point, I was like, brainstorming, walking around, brainstorming, talking to my cameraman, talking to a fella at the gym as well, just kind of like trying to work this stuff out. I'm like, it doesn't feel right, man. When weights don't feel right, like, yeah, okay, I can put more weight on the bar. My hips feel stiff, like they're almost like stinging, crampy, achy. I feel like I'm not in the groove. So then I think I went up to 120 kilos, 140, I think this is. I wasn't happy. I was feeling really stiff, particularly kind of around the hip flexors. So I went, screw it, man. I'm not going to continue. So I went from that, I went all the way up to the second floor of the gym, and I did some sit-ups on the GHD. I've never done that before. I really wanted to exaggerate open up the hips, right? Extend the hips under load from kind of the other way. So I did that. Kind of felt all right. Went back to front squats. Worked up to some number again, 120 or 140. I can't remember what it was. Felt a little bit better, but still wasn't feeling right. So I did, what did I do? A few sets. I think I did 5 sets of 20, 5 sets of 10 sit-ups on the GHD. Went back down, did a few more kind of floor sit-ups. Really try to kind of open up those, or put blood, really. That's what I was trying to do. Get blood into those kind of sore, tight areas, kind of anterior hip. It still didn't feel good. So at that point, I left it. I was like, okay, I've warmed up the quads. I've warmed up the core and the hip flexors, which kind of were feeling tight and achy and whatever. So then I went, I did those 2 things, and 2 lots of running up on the front squats. Didn't work. So then I went over to the hamstring curl machine. I'm thinking, yesterday I smashed the hamstrings. I shouldn't be doing this. I used really, really light weight, and I did like a set of 30, 3 sets of 30, I believe I did. Then I went back to front squats, and by then I started feeling a little bit better. So out of all of these retest ideas that I kind of ran through to today, it took me a freaking long time to get to this point. Basically, the session was over, really, in terms of time, how much time I kind of used to do all of this. But by the time I finished the hamstring curls, I started feeling a little bit better. So today I felt strong. I just could not get into those positions. So this is the trouble about training for the stuff that I want to do, which is strength, full range of motion. It's a different beast. Like if I was a power lifter, I wouldn't need that extra range of motion. I would just slide the bar down my back, put a belt on, put knee sleeves, maybe some wrist wraps, and then squat to parallel. No worries. Like that is not a great amount of mobility to get to those positions. But when you're talking about ATG and especially front squat, where it's like you need thoracic mobility, you need shoulder mobility, you need hip mobility, ankle mobility, knee mobility, everything. Like you need to be mobile to be able to go into those lifts. Wasn't feeling it. And so I worked up for the 3rd time on the front squat, went all the way up, and then I did some deadlifts. And today deadlifts, like I felt strong, right? And deadlifts are less range of motion than squats, obviously, especially ATG squats. And I was able to pull 250 today. I just felt good. Like in terms of strength, I was there. It's just the mobility wasn't happy. And so this is how weird it is. It's kind of like 2 extremes meeting together to make an ATG squat. The deadlifts felt good. The hips felt strong. Everything felt strong. My hamstrings kind of felt all right. But it had it was a head stretcher. Yesterday, light day. Today, expecting to do stuff. It's almost like, I've spoken about this before, it's almost like when you have a few light days, your body locks up. And I know a lot of you guys have been telling me, you need a day off, you need a day off, you need a day off. Honestly, man, I think it's even worse when I have a day off. Because my tissues just lock up. Maybe because I've had so many days freaking in a row that when I have a lighter day, like, I don't know what it is, man. It's strange. It's strange. But that was my day. When I hit 250 on the deadlift, I was like, well, that's it. I've had enough. Like, I don't want to go back to squatting. I don't want to do anything. Today, I plan to do front squat, back squat, deadlift, and do a lot of front squat for volume. No. I was just working with singles. There was nothing I can do. Hips were kind of achy, weird in those ATG positions. So I left it at that. That was basically it. After that, I went over to do some mind-numbing bench press, bicep curl stuff. Bicep curls to keep the elbows happy while I bench. I did some benching, and that was basically it. I went home. So kind of a frustrating day because I didn't feel too bad in terms of, I kind of felt like fresh centrally. My CNS was fresh, ready to do some proper work. But my legs, my hips were not interested. Whether it's the fascia, whether it's the muscles, whether it's dehydration, I don't even know what it is. I felt good, but I just couldn't go today. And this is where auto-regulation, this is where you got to leave the ego at the door, come in. Like I always say to you guys, always come in, man. Always come in. Warm up. If you warm up and it's not there, man. Just go home, come back another day. Today, I came in, I warmed up, didn't feel good. So then I warmed up a bit more, didn't feel good, warmed up a little bit more after that. And then towards the end of that, I started feeling a little bit better. So I was stubborn today, but I made sure I didn't push too hard. I didn't do any. This is the thing, like when you see me do volume on front squats or on deadlifts or you name it, usually I feel good. Usually I will never do volume on a body that doesn't want to be even there, right? So this is what I like about the way I approach things. I come in and I do a bunch of singles. I warm up, I do a bunch of singles. And if the singles don't feel well, I ain't doing volume, man. I don't care. Of course, I can lower the weight to whatever number and do some volume. My body's not happy to be here because the singles are not feeling good. Sure, I can drop the weight, but the singles are not feeling good. Something is off. For whatever reason, like today I was kind of trying to experiment, different ideas, different thoughts. Is it the hip flexors? Is it the abs? Is it the quads? Is it the hamstrings? Did all of these things to try and warm up, send blood into those areas. Yes, after the hamstrings, after like 45 minutes of doing all this stuff, I kind of got to a hamstring curl machine. That kind of made me feel a little bit better, but it still wasn't right. Still, I just can't get into those positions. And weightlifting is very simple. You need to get yourself into mechanically advantageous positions. You know, you might be strong than the next guy, stronger than the next guy. But if the next guy can assume better positioning, he's going to be outlifting you because it's physics. The longer the lever arm, the more force you require to move that weight at the end of it, right? This is how it works, man. So like if you are in a really bent over bad position in a deadlift or your hips shoot up, you are not leveraging your limbs in such a way which you're going to make the most amount of force. This is how it is. It's just we're just a machine lifting a whole bunch of weight off the floor. So you might feel strong, but if you can't get into position, you're screwed. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're making it harder. You're not only fighting the weight, but you're also fighting your body. Think about any analogy you want. Think about the cranes that you see, that you see on building sites or whatever. If you just think of that arm of the crane really, 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 really long, then you need a lot more force at the other end of that, to like the hydraulics to control that, to lift the weight. That's kind of how it works. You want that arm as short as possible, because that's going to require the least amount of force. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not trying to sound like one, but I'm just trying to give you an analogy how important positioning is. So when we see Tian Tao, Lou, Clarence Kennedy, Klokov, when I see these guys squat, the bar is over the mid-foot, the spine is stacked, like everything is where it needs to be. Whereas when I front squat, when you compare that to some of the guys that I mentioned, I'm having these other forces which they don't really have because of their really good positioning. So on one hand, they are stronger than me, okay? And number two, they have better positioning. And so when you put those things together, they got 100 kilos on my freaking front squat. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like that. But anyway, you have days like this. As I was telling my cameraman, like sometimes, I try really, really hard to work out the issues on the day. Test, retest, do all these different exercises. And it's not fun. Like, it's not fun beating around the bush and being like, God damn, I was just in a good period, man, the last week or so, or 2 or 3 weeks. Really good period. Where did this shit come from, man? Like, why did my body just all of a sudden change? The recipe has been freaking the same, man. The recipe has been the same. Why did it change? Well, I've recently changed something, but, is it that? I don't know. I did some hamstring curls the last few days to kind of combat all of these Hindu squats. And now my legs are feeling all locked up and weird and whatever. It is what it is. Not every day is going to be a fun day. Not every day is going to be a smooth day, but it is what it is, man. You come in, you kind of try and work it out. If you can't work it out, then you go home, get some more rest, get some more food, get some more water, and tomorrow hopefully is going to be a better day. But over the years of training, man, like I've kind of worked out the symptoms that my body sends me. I kind of worked out, how would you say in chess? Reply moves. I can't think of the word. I can't think of the word. Like a backup to somebody else's move, like a counter move to whatever the body's sending you. So sometimes you think, oh, it's my front hip that's kind of really locked up, but it could be your hamstrings. Or sometimes your knee hurts and you're like, man, my knee is really hurting. Must be like the quads, but it's not. It's the hips. It's the glute medius. Like, it's so weird. The ITB is referring that pain to the knee. It's really just your hips. So over the years, you kind of work around some of these issues. So if you kind of rock up and you're like, oh, okay, so this is the issue today. It's almost like the body will send you different symptoms almost randomly. And you kind of assess those symptoms, and then you go to your toolbox and you pick out the tool that you need for that particular job. It's kind of like, that's biology, man. That's medicine. This is what emergency is. You know, you're kind of always adaptive. This is why it never made sense to me for people kind of lock out their training programs like 6 months in advance. What if like next week you wake up and you got like a terrible ache in the hip and you can't do the volume you're supposed to do? What are you going to do then? Like, you have to address that. But then you can't do the same volume that you were supposed to do, you know. And on it goes. But the interesting thing about today for me is I was strong. Felt strong, man. I deadlifted 250. Usually I hit 240 and I called it quits. The reason I didn't go for 260 is because I really wanted to get 250. I didn't want to fail another 260. I really didn't want to do that. Maybe it was there today, maybe it wasn't. But after failing 260 now for a whole bunch of times, going like 3 months without hitting 260 or 2 months, whatever it was by now, it's kind of playing on my mind now. So I thought, let's hit 250. Maybe next time hit 260. But that's the funniest thing. I felt strong today, but I couldn't squat. I could deadlift, right? Because the range of motion is very minimal in the deadlift. I just couldn't squat. But I could deadlift 250. Oh, God. I can understand people, man. I can understand people like throwing in the towel and being like, screw this shit. Why is it so damn difficult? Why is the body so damn complicated? Can't I just give you like a steady diet of a particular program? You just respond accordingly and we have a good relationship. Nah. Something's always amiss. Something's always changing. Something's always in flux. There's all these different, you know, curves on a chart. Some of them are like multi-month long curves on a chart. You know, we're talking about, you know, stimulus, rest adaptation, like, but there's other things going on. You know, there's remodeling happening on many different, like every tissue has its own little cycle. What the muscle does, what the bone does, what the nerve does, what the fat tissue does, what the liver does, what the pancreas does, what the kidneys do, like they all go their own little clocks, right? And so it makes sense of that. It's hard. On top of all of that, it's also, we're social beings. So we eat different things. We sleep. There's different stresses around us. There's different weather. Like, oh my Lord. There's so many things going on, and you try to kind of like map out exactly what's going on. It's very, very difficult, but that's all part of it. That's all part of it. And I think as a seasoned veteran or seasoned lifter, you kind of get used to some of these symptoms, these feedback mechanisms that your body sends you. And you go, oh, okay, I've seen that. I know exactly what to do for that. It's kind of like that. You develop a toolbox with all these different tools that you can call upon, you know. So if this happened like 5 years ago, I would literally walk in, hit the front squat, you know, whatever, 140, 130, 120, and be like, oh shit, I'm feeling crap today. I need a rest day, and walk away. I wouldn't even try front squat. I wouldn't try to do anything. And a lot of the time, if squats feel shit, I'm kind of mentally tapped out anyway. I just want to go home and call it quits. Because for me, it's always been like, if I can't squat, I'm not really keen for training at all. But today, I did 3 lots of front squats, man. I worked up to a single training max, or whatever you want to call it, 3 times. I did quads, front squat, feel shit. I did sit-ups, front squats, feel shit. I did hamstrings, front squat, feel a little bit better. Screw it. Let's do deadlifts. Shit, I feel really good at deadlifts. And then I did some bench and biceps, and that was it. So, you know, it's kind of like, you got to keep your cool. Oh, all right, no worries. Okay, I've warmed up. Everything's feeling shit. I'm not going to have a tanty and, you know, leave the gym and cry about it or whatever. Yeah, I'm going to still be here for the next 2 hours, one and a half, 2 hours. And I'll just try and work it out, whatever. It's wasting my time, whatever. But I'm doing something. I'm moving. I'm learning, you know. And a lot of the time you learn when you're not having fun. Well, that's just the sort of day I'm having. Even my phone had enough. The battery, I got a battery message. It's less than 20% and the whole recording stopped. It just summarizes the day, man. The phone didn't want to play today. The body doesn't want to play today. Nothing wants to play today. whatever, man. It is what it is. Anyway, guys, hope your day was a little bit better than mine. Appreciate all of you guys on the list and on the comments. And I hope I have a better day tomorrow. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.